Hey, everybody, and welcome to episode 41 of The holidays are coming. We are recording this as of November 17th, and we've had a lot of people asking us about anxiety and the holidays. So Dr. V and I decided we would dedicate this hour or half hour to what we would do for those individuals with anxiety, how to prepare for the holidays, and so we can support all of you and all of your patients and your practice in making sure that they know that there are options for anxiety. Dr. V, what do you have to say about that?
Anxiety is prevalent. It's
Yeah.
everywhere. And I mean, even we go through it temporarily, even getting ready for the holidays, right? And that suppresses the immune system. It's part of what perpetuates the cold and flu season, makes things seem more worse and more ominous. I guess it's kind of a beautiful thing that the way our holidays are structured, that we have Thanksgiving leading up to it, right? Because, right, the attitude of gratitude is part of the way to keep some of that anxiety down and be
Mhm.
grateful for what you do have instead of worrying about what you don't have or should have. And
Right.
so
Yeah.
all that's helpful.
So this episode is for you. If you're out there and you hear the word Thanksgiving and all of a sudden you can think of that family member that you don't want to talk to, and your anxiety starts to go up, we want to empower you with things that you can start doing now so that when you arrive at that table, you're calm, cool, collected, and you can react to what they're saying as opposed to respond. We're going to talk about the neurochemistry, the nutrition and minerals that are required to make that possible. And yes, it is possible, isn't it, Dr. V? You want
100%.
you want to be that rock that Dr. V talks about, right?
That's
The
right.
hurricane
Instead
should
of the
come.
sponge.
That's right. And nothing can move you. So this month, actually, we're running a special in my office for those individuals to prepare for it. We're talking about Nevaton. We're talking about min checks.
Mhm.
Talking about what's the third thing that we're putting? Oh, of course, lion's mane, some mushrooms to help, to fortify those people before they get to that table and
Right.
inevitably have to have that conversation with somebody. And so let's talk about the mineral part of it first, right? Because you talk about this
Right.
all the time. And I know we've talked about minerals, but I think this is something that worth repeating every week, right? Are you
Right. Right.
enough minerals? And what would you let somebody suggest somebody do between now and Thanksgiving to help make them be more like that rock?
Yeah, I mean, you laid it out. Minerals are the answer to that. Minerals are calming. A lot of the minerals, especially electrolytes and that sort of thing, are calming. So that they're going to make us be able to, water off the duck's back sort of thing, right? Where those emotions don't get physically stored and compromised. Because when and that's what makes chronic illness such a challenge from a clinician's perspective, is you've had the same problem for 10 years. Now every emotional event, in the last 10 years gets heaped on to that weakness. And so we need to really strengthen all the glands and organs so that we are less penetrated physically, by emotions, right?
Yeah.
And so again, be more rock-like than sponge-like. Rocks are minerals. So those minerals give us the wherewithal, the calmness to navigate these crazy seasons. They also bring tone to the intestinal lining. Think of leaky gut is a lot of where inflammation comes from, where autoimmune conditions come from, and so and brain fog. And so if we're brain fogged, then we're going to be more easily agitated and that sort of thing. So the minerals are going to give us that resilience to be the rock through the holidays and not be taken down every time, the in-law or the the other the sister or sibling or that sort of stuff,
That guy,
says something, that
that guy
person.
who likes to push buttons at
Or
the very
girl.
front. So a lot of times people think of magnesium. Magnesium is, something that's more popular talked about. And I do think everybody could put more attention on magnesium. I'm always talking
Hmm.
about eating more beans and foods that are rich in magnesium. Um,
Hmm.
but can you talk a little bit about it specifically when it plays into anxiety? Why is magnesium one of the minerals that we're talking about that is
Hmm.
important for anxiety specifically?
Right. So magnesium also helps facilitate sulfation, and sulfation is the primary pathway in the liver that breaks down that cortisol, that stress hormone. Right. When we get
Ah,
angst, right, we get high serotonin, which is also broken down in the sulfation pathway, and high cortisol, again, broken down in the sulfation pathway. So magnesium is one of the great, and so frontal headaches. If we're not breaking those hormones down properly, we get the frontal headache, and so magnesium is a great solution to go when things really tee us off real easy, or we are unforgiving, if you will, can't get over the fact that, Uncle John said, XYZ, that, or we have a frontal headache. Those are signs that maybe magnesium, again, symptomatically, magnesium helps with bowel function. So if you're not pooping at least once a day, or trouble falling asleep, those are further signs, that you might need magnesium too, from the patient perspective.
What foods around the Thanksgiving table are going to offer magnesium? That's a good question, I suppose, right?
Yeah, that would be would that be the vegetables, kale, right?
Hopefully, if you're going to eat vegetables, yeah, but, potatoes, probably not so much. Stuffing, probably not. Uh,
Right.
yeah, pumpkin pie, probably not. Maybe there's some in the pumpkin, I don't know. But yeah, good point. So when it comes to magnesium, beyond foods, if you want to really fortify yourself, a lot of people, and I'm saying this for those out there who are starting to read about magnesium and the different forms of magnesium, right? Threonate is having its moment, and glycinate. Everybody's, oh, glycinate's the best, but food is always going to be superior, right? And I want to remind
Mhm.
everybody of that who's listening. And this is why I personally take that EZ mag, because it's just Swiss chard and buckwheat. Maybe you should throw some Swiss chard on your Thanksgiving table. There
There
you
you
go.
go.
Maybe some buckwheat on your Thanksgiving table.
Right.
But yeah, it's going to be the superior delivery, I think. I mean, there are other ways to get it for sure from a supplement, but that
Well, and go over the fact that's three different forms of magnesium in the Easy Mag, right? So you're
actually,
not just
Mark
taking a
Anderson said it
synthetic.
was over 15 forms of magnesium.
Serious.
Yeah,
Okay.
or in
There's
there.
a dive.
Yeah, right. So
Okay.
no wonder why it outperforms, right, in these lab tests,
Hmm.
all of these forms of magnesium. So yeah, it might be a good time to start taking little magnesium in the morning and at night. It
Yeah.
just to make sure you have it in there. But
And
magnesium,
help.
go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, it helps those muscles relax, right? And magnesium sticks to the hemoglobin to help carry oxygen in the body. So for athletic performance recovery, it's also going to be super beneficial there.
Yeah.
Go
Well, and
ahead.
I like to repeat what you said about how it supporting the sulfation pathway to break down cortisol, super important, because the
Hmm.
elevated cortisol is also going to jack with your sleep if you don't get that broken down at night, and it's
Right.
going to give you a belly, right? It's going to give you a little bit of
No,
right.
thank you.
No, thank you. Right. Well, you've got enough challenges going into the holidays with that. Let's keep the cortisol low. All right.
Right. So the two neurotransmitters of anxiety, high serotonin. So muscle testing, that's bilateral K21, is going to be high serotonin. Symptoms of that is that OCD, obsessiveness, can't get over things. Events just stick. We get stressed and stay stressed instead of moving on to the next situation. So that's a lot. And again, that breaks down in the sulfation pathway. Cortisol is a major trigger for so think of, we need to focus on safety. We need to focus where do we need to get during periods of stress, right?
Mhm.
What's the solution? So that's the high serotonin. That's the benefit of it, is we can get laser focused and go get things done. But we get stuck in that. That's the obsessive compulsive disease, OCD symptoms. So that's one aspect, one high neurotransmitter. The
Let's
other
repeat
is
that
high
though.
acetylcholine.
I want to
We'll go
repeat
back
that.
there.
Yeah, because we'll get into acetylcholine, but so many
Okay.
times people don't realize that. They think serotonin, you can't get enough, right? Like serotonin, that's why
Yep.
we have drugs to try to keep serotonin high. But this is also, I want to remind everybody out there who's taking a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor, or those of you who are caring for somebody who is on one of those, what Dr.
Hmm.
said is just so profound. It's reported all the time that the longer they're on them, the more their anxiety is, because too much serotonin without it being
Hmm.
able to be broken down or moved on to its next, into melatonin, which is its next life
Hmm.
cycle.
Hmm.
It can be one of the reasons that people have anxiety. And I just think it's not talked about enough, right? It's not talked about
Hmm.
enough that those things that are creating too much serotonin are one of the main reasons that people are having this anxiety. And you talked about kidneys, right?
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
talked about that a lot. I want to tell a quick story about that. I work with a gentleman who was on several antidepressant medications as we were working him off of them. And he had one day while he was still on them, he had some suicidal ideation, right? And that's part of that suicide so high. It drives that anxiety so high. And that's exactly what he tested for, is that kidney point, right? And in his case, it was Arginex is what he needed to help
Nice.
support his kidneys enough to help facilitate reduction of high serotonin, which was amazing, right? So
Yeah.
kidney
Yeah.
products are going to be so important for these individuals as well, I would say. in that.
100%. Yeah. I mean, if when there's suicidal ideations, of the mineral that I first typically will test would be lithium.
Mm,
So you've got your amazing product, the lion's mane with lithium. It's
yeah,
going to be stupendous there. It's,
yeah,
help people get over those ideations and get out of that rut, that scary rut, really.
yeah.
Also remember, serotonin can cause blood pressure to go up. So there's,
Mhm,
oh, now you need another drug,
mhm,
because, as an
mhm.
antidote for that. So
More
on
side
and
effects,
on and those.
please.
Yeah. And so round and round the cycle goes, right? And they end up
Right.
in big trouble ultimately. Yeah,
Can we
yeah.
talk more about how to balance serotonin? Because lithium is a great option for that, right? It does
Mm-hmm.
help bring high levels down. But what are some like? Let's talk a little more about this kidney connection, right? Why?
Hmm.
Why?
Hmm.
Luckily, I mean, he confessed it to me while I was sitting there with him, so I got him on into muscle testing, was able to determine it was the kidneys, right? So I was lucky to have that timing right there, and he hasn't had any ideation since once we've supported his,
Wow.
which is amazing.
Just changed the outcome of his life
Yeah. Oh,
with that
yeah,
little interaction. Yeah.
without a
What a
doubt.
blessing.
Well, what are the other things that people need? I think about converting serotonin into melatonin, right? So we do
Hmm.
have methylation working for that, correct? Right? Oh,
Yes, yes. So magnesium, wouldn't you know?
wow.
Mag so magnesium and B12, which is a little perplexing when you realize that most people think of B12 for energy, right? But B12 actually helps is one of the main nutrients to help convert, or the B vitamin necessary to convert serotonin to melatonin.
Hmm,
So
hmm,
think serotonin's up and going, focused, right? Melatonin's chill out, heal the brain, sleep. Fun fact, melatonin actually shrinks the brain while we sleep in a good way, and that's
right.
what allows the glymphatic system to cleanse and heal the brain. So we need to convert that serotonin to melatonin to heal, get that deep, restful, restorative sleep. B12 and magnesium are the key nutrients to help convert that lovely cycle.
And there has to be some zinc and some B6 and a few other, obviously a lot more chemistry than that too. And
Sure.
I would have to throw those in there because they tend to be ones that are missing from the standard American diet, right?
Hmm.
Especially in
Hmm.
the holidays. Because the things that people are starting to eat now are costing us some of those vitamins. The vitamin,
Hmm.
like all the sugar increase, right? Which
Right.
is probably almost I wouldn't say inevitable, but you would be foolish to pretend like it's not going to happen in a lot of people's lives. Let's put it that
Hmm.
way.
Hmm. Hmm.
So we have to be ahead of that, right? We have to understand that that sugar is depleting a lot of these nutrients and can be driving this anxiety in a way that people don't realize it if they're not replacing those nutrients.
And alcohol depletes B6.
Exactly.
So
Yes.
years ago, I had a staff member that was very active in AA,
Mm,
and put her and a couple of people on the B6 niacinamide to help with all, the alcohol challenges. And they felt so much better. I mean, typically these people would be coming in buying 3 or 4 bottles for their friends
yeah.
because they felt so profoundly different on B6. I mean, when you look at neurotransmitters,
Yep.
70% of them are massively B6 dependent.
Mhm.
So, I mean, dopamine's hugely B6 dependent, all these really profound ones for mood. So if we're deficient in B6, we're going to psychologically going to be all over the place.
Yeah, it's a water soluble vitamin, and we just need it like crazy. There's 100 times more B6 in your brain than there is in the rest of your body, by the
Ooh,
way.
that's a nice
Yeah.
pearl right there.
Yeah, if you want a good brain. And I always talk about, I know you mentioned B6 niacinamide. These are standard process products for those of you who are listening for the
Oh
first.
yeah.
We talk a lot about that company specifically, but a lot of different ones as well. But
Mhm.
I actually know that I talk about niacinamide B6, which is the opposite, right? B6 niacinamide is
Mhm.
5 parts B6 to 1 part niacinamide. And niacinamide B6 was actually created by Dr. Lee for his alcoholic friends and colleagues.
Mhm. Okay.
So the B3 is going to get depleted an awful lot in these
Mhm.
individuals who are drinking
Mhm.
alcohol. So those of you who are going to imbibe over the holidays, I would
Mhm.
strongly encourage a bottle of niacinamide B6 to replenish and replace that night, the next day, whenever, or just constantly be on it throughout the holidays if you're going to be
Right.
drinking, because that is the piece that is going to get ripped out of your body by the alcohol and start to cause chaos that does you don't know where it's coming from, and that's where it's coming
Right. Right. I
right.
mean, we end up on a tangent here, but
Yeah,
I mean, basically, a hangover is leaky gut and nutrient deficiencies, right?
there you go. Should we
So,
talk? Yeah, that'll be next episode, the Thanksgiving episode.
that'll be the first of the year.
Mhm,
Or I guess
mhm.
we should cover it before New Year's Eve, huh?
Yeah, right.
Right. So well, you talked about niacinamide. So high acetylcholine is the other neurotransmitter of anxiety. That's more the panic attack type of anxiety. That's the druggie coming off of the withdrawals and the panic that they would have. And when you know acetylcholine is the neurotransmitter, the brain's control of the liver. So when we're in that acute stage of detoxification, that acetylcholine, the brain's telling the liver, detox, get this stuff out of the system. So acetylcholine goes up. There's a liver point on bilaterally that is going to associate with high acetylcholine if we're muscle testing it. So yeah, so niacinamide is a great way to help bring that down. B5, pantothenic acid, is another great one to help bring down acetylcholine and minimize that type of panic attack type anxiety.
Yeah, because yeah, well, there's a lot that we need to help break that down for sure. Yes, for sure.
Mhm.
So, okay, so high acetylcholine, you're talking about liver pathways, so it would be wise to support the liver in general, right? Something that
Mhm.
could be like a broad spectrum liver support to facilitate all of these, conversions so that we don't get too high
Right,
levels
right.
in the brain overall.
SP cleanse works great in that. But yes, broad spectrum. Anesthesia is going to inhibit those, especially sulfation, but anesthesia is going to inhibit those pathways. And I see that showing up 3, 4 months later still if somebody was under general anesthesia. So that's some of the emotional angst that can go along after a surgery or some of that. Mhm.
Okay. Okay. So basically, so far we've talked about the things that drive high serotonin and acetylcholine. So we talk about the kidneys helping or being important for high serotonin. What would be the organ? Would it be specifically the liver for high acetylcholine? That would be.
Yes. Yeah. Gallbladder tends to be low acetylcholine. So it's liver gallbladder in acupuncture. So
Okay.
liver is high acetylcholine, gallbladder is low acetylcholine.
Okay.
Right. I guess going back, I mean, you talked about low serotonin. So many people are on SSRIs. That's because low serotonin gets, I mean, it's such a ugly paradigm. But,
Right.
that's low serotonin is typically toxic metals causing the kidneys to struggle and causing the person to be depressed. And then they take drugs to lower that. So that's what, the commercials, and everybody it gets a lot of press. So people think of serotonin for mood that way. But I mean, both you and I are in these high go-getter areas where people are actually probably more prone to have high serotonin with the
Yeah.
anxiety and the drive.
Mhm.
I took us on a little tangent there, but wanted to
No.
follow up on that. Mhm.
Well, one other neurotransmitters that we forgot to mention is so a lot of people think about GABA, right? So I know a lot of people
There
when
you
they
go.
have anxiety, they come in, they're taking GABA. And I know that if Dave Hogshead was listening right now, he'd be shouting, Kava, Kava, tell him to take Kava, because he's huge on that, constantly having people chew Kava. And I did have a lady come in a couple weeks ago, and that was definitely, I mean, her anxiety was so overwhelming her. I mean, obviously, we worked on everything you and I are talking about, but kava was something that I was offered as something to help get her through it, right? It's a band-aid to
Yeah,
get through this time. So because it is
love it.
GABAergic, right? It is helpful in that aspect of it.
And
But
it's so much better to stimulate it that way that studies have shown that taking GABA itself downregulates receptors, GABA receptors.
right,
And so a lot of the companies are not recommending GABA specifically as an amino there.
right, right, exactly. So high glutamate isn't something that you would say could cause anxiety as well. I mean, we talked about high serotonin and high acetylcholine, but
Hmm.
in those cases, maybe it's just because people are just they're thinking too fast and moving too fast and they can't slow down, right?
Hmm.
But
Hmm.
it's that glutamate to GABA conversion that, of course, I would be talking about again, and that's where lithium would be another great
Yep, P6.
and B6, basically all the things that we over and over and over again. But a
Right.
great pearl about instead of taking GABA, right, making sure that your body has enough of what it needs to make a glutamate and GABA, right, and
Hmm.
convert the glutamate to GABA, I think is even
Hmm.
more important.
Hmm.
Help with the GABA receptors for sure.
Right. So two lifestyle issues with those. where do we want to start? One of the main causes of low GABA is parasites. Parasites, because of their effect on the colon. So the
Mm.
first thing I think of for low GABA is parasites.
So when
So
somebody
we
comes
want
in
to
and they're taking a GABA supplement, immediately we're gonna check you for parasites, right?
well, trouble sleeping, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
GABA shuts the brain down to sleep, right? So
Okay.
glutamate is we're up, we're awake, we're going,
Mm.
and then that needs to, in the presence of B6 and so on, convert to GABA to shut the brain off, turn the filter off, so that we stop thinking about the day and sleep.
Right.
So parasites compromise that. So yes, we want to treat for parasites in that situation. Uh, don't forget glutamate, monosodium glutamate, MSG. Ever heard of that? Ever seen that in a food? So when you're laying awake staring at the ceiling, something you just ate, probably a spice, potentially in the fermentation of soy sauce.
Chick-fil-A, sorry.
Good Christian company, but the food's a different story. So yeah, so glutamate. I mean, even unfortunately, if we're throwing restaurants under the bus,
Which
even
one? They're gonna use it, right? Because it's a flavor,
yeah,
right?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
even these high end places. I mean, I've been to some very nice steak places. Ruth Chris, unfortunately, openly puts MSG on their steaks, and hey, it tastes great. But then we, lay awake staring at the ceiling all night because we got that glutamate, that stimulation going on in the brain. Again, soy sauce. So if you're doing sushi, I recommend using lemon. Wasabi is very anti-parasitic. Again, so I use lemon juice and put my wasabi in that, and that's what I dip the sushi in and skip the soy sauce because the good fish, the omegas and so on in there is beneficial for the brain, but the soy sauce is a brain killer. So
Yeah. Ugh. Gosh.
yuck. Right,
Good
right,
call.
right.
Yeah,
Mhm.
no, that's all good stuff. So, okay.
So with the MSG, glutamate is a manufacturing byproduct of a lot of the fermentation. So even things like curry, that is a very good spice, right? But
Mhm.
in the extraction of that, I just say you have to muscle test it because sometimes, or even protein powders are going to be the same thing. Sometimes in that the extraction of it, there's glutamate, the G part, the excitatory part in that product. So like I love curry, but on some of it will stimulate me and some of it does not. So just have to test it.
Wow. Where are you testing for glutamate and GABA then? What are your spots? Just
Right on the pec margin is high excitotoxin.
Yep.
Yeah, and then GABA is right. What is that? The lung one, I think, or no? Yeah, lung one,
Yeah.
something like
That's
that.
gonna be high GABA, right?
This is low. This is low GABA,
Okay, low GABA.
and then this is high glutamate
High
on the
glutamate.
pec
Okay.
margin.
Low GABA is
Yeah,
the other side, right?
low GABA is yeah lungs.
Okay,
No,
lungs.
no, no. High GABA, you mean. Low GABA,
Yes,
low,
that's right. High
yeah,
GABA lungs. Now we're
yeah.
messing everybody else.
Yes.
Left and
So
right,
typically all the face points are going to be low, all the body points are going to be high
except for the one
neurotransmitters,
dopamine spot, right?
except for dopamine, which is on the lip. Yes.
Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. Got it. And it's
Yes.
funny when I find high glutamate. One of the things that I find is the what helps change in the muscle test is something that contains sulforaphane, something that helps with the detox and
Okay.
the
All right.
sulfation. Of course, those types
Mhm.
of detox. Uh,
Sulforaphane.
right.
But that's especially beneficial for P450, which is a whole nother rabbit trail. But
Yeah.
talk about that when we get into cold flu stuff.
Have
Mhm.
you, and aside, Bard, have you tried or used much the hemp seed oil product from Standard Process that has the True Broc in it? So there is some
Hmm.
NRF2 activation in with that. I've been finding that's
Cool.
been helpful. Yeah.
Against sulfation or
High glutamate.
P450?
High
Oh
glutamate.
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. That's why they're so chill, huh?
Yeah. Right.
That's
And
why
that helps
potheads are
with
so
for
chill.
anxiety, right? So there's a lot in there, to help people with anxiety, not just
Okay.
the oil and not just the hemp seed, right? It's actually helping to clear the excesses of these neurotransmitters as well.
So if you go out to Chinese food, take a bong hit, huh?
There you go. That's well, with a little bit of broccoli, right? Get the broccoli sprouts with the
There
bone.
you
Or-
go.
That's not what we're saying, everybody. Everybody's gonna
No,
be,
but
you
that
guys are just
that
smoking cigarettes and stuff all the time.
so that is a good pro though. I'll have to play with that using hemp using the hemp oil after exposure to glutamate. Mhm.
Well, and I've also been testing the new red food against it too, and sometimes it is a red food because the astaxanthin does help with that NRF2, and so it is
Okay.
helpful in clearing those pathways too. I don't know how if you're
Yeah.
using that yet or not.
I've been loving that product. It worked great for my race last weekend.
Okay,
Been
sweet.
feeling good on it. Yeah.
Nice, nice. What we didn't talk about yet, and we're running a little close on time, is the difference between suppressing anxiety and transforming it, right?
Ah. Nice.
Well, that's it,
Yeah.
and that's what most people do is they stuff it down, and then they bury it with some alcohol, right?
hmm
It's
hmm
and some people are still going to do that this way, that way, this holiday. But what we're hoping to do is for those individuals doing that, give them some other things to help, so it doesn't leave lingering damage or create more anxiety and make things worse for you, right? Once
Right.
the effects of that wear off.
So most of the habits we have for the doctors out there, I mean, or well, for the person listening as well, the patient, I mean, most of the habits are self-medicating, right? You know, why is the kid smoking cigarettes or wanting to get high or,
Right,
eating sugar, right?
right.
Any of this stuff is so we use that to try to understand what the mechanism is, treat the reason they're craving sugar, treat the reason they're craving whatever pot or, whatever bad habit is, caffeine, any of these, fix the underlying biochemistry, then it's easier to get off the antidepressant, or get off the whatever, the blood pressure medication that's causing these symptoms. So the first step is to understand what they're self-medicating or why they're self-medicating, treat the cause and move on.
Well, here's a question I might hear somebody asking right now after hearing you say that. So what are they missing, or what's going to help if they're reaching for pot as their go-to? What is it that they need
Mhm.
so that they reach less for that as their means of self-medicating? What would you say?
Right. Well, I mean, you kind of answered it when you talked about using hemp oil for the excitotoxins, right?
Mhm,
So
mhm.
so they're in that high excitatory state, so we need to help bring them down, so to speak.
So everything we talked about today, basically.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they're eating the food colors or the monsters or, drinks or things like that, that are causing this high glutamate scenario, then we need to help break that down so that they're not stuck in that high stress situation. Like this gentleman that was on a plane. I was on a plane years ago. And all of a sudden, there was all this commotion in the center of the plane, and this full on, sorry, hippy dippy, tie-dye shirt and dreadlocks and the whole deal. It was, you can't do that. You can't do that here. It turns out the guy's like trying to light a joint on the airplane. And the stewardess, no, you cannot do that. And so he goes to the bathroom and they're like, you can't do it in the bathroom either. And so he goes to light a joint in the bathroom. And his excuse was, I did too much cocaine. I need to come down. And so we had to literally land the plane and arrest this guy because he was so strung out and so hung up on the fact that he needed to smoke pot to come down from the cocaine that he did.
Wow.
And he openly confessed that to the whole stinking plane.
Oh,
So
what year
self
was this, Dr. B? Is this like
was that?
the 60s that this happened, or is this?
No, this was I was teaching. I was on my way to teach somewhere. So yeah, it was crazy. We
Well, it's funny. I've heard so many stories of people chewing kava before going on flights when they have that anxiety.
Yeah. We do. Sorry, mother-in-law. We do that for my mother-in-law.
Well, I think even Lee Carroll tells a famous story about how he was experimenting. And I think he chewed so many he could barely like stand up because his muscles were so relaxed. And the flight, if I recall, he tells a funny story about that.
Yeah. Or the story about the Tahitians, and that's why they're so chill. If they have a tribal dispute, they all just, you know, drink kava tea until they pass out on the beach and wake up 2 days later and everything's okay.
Yep. Well, they
It's a
use
great,
that for a lot of things in those ceremonies for sure. To get.
right.
So yeah, so kava in the short term, we didn't talk about Nevaton because Nevaton's something that I talk a lot about because it's got that St. John's wort in there and
hmm
some saffron. Um, St. John's wort, what do you think the mechanism there is that we can help people
Well,
understand?
serotonin, right? It helps drive nerve pathways, kidney pathways in particular. It's antiviral.
Hmm.
So yeah, stabilize serotonin. I like it. I call it the focus factor. I mean, I'll chew it up, at work sometimes to stay on track and stay what they call present time consciousness with patients.
Wow.
So it's nice
Straight up
there.
St. John's Wort or Nevaton itself?
Nevaton,
Oh,
Nevaton.
wow. Okay.
Yeah,
There's a
yeah,
good
yeah.
pearl for everybody.
Right, huh?
Brain isn't 1000%. This, it might make a difference. Awesome.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, Dr. V, I think we did it. I think we gave some people some hope and some ideas about what they can do and I hope all of you listening can take some of this and apply it to your lives right away, going into the holidays to fortify
Mhm.
now so that you can have the best holiday without having the anxiety
Mhm.
aspect of it as well. But
Right, right.
for next week, we are gonna get really primed and ready for something for Thanksgiving. I'm not
Mhm.
sure what it'll be yet, but it's gonna be a lot of fun. Any last thoughts for everybody before we sign off for them today?
Yeah. The good news is turkey's neutral for all four blood types.
Well, see, people are thinking, well, it's just gonna give me too much tryptophan, which is gonna give me too much of this, right? But it's
Yep.
I mean, yes, there's tryptophan in there, but
So stay tuned. Catch you next week, right? So
yeah,
yes, as you said, hopefully this gives takes the anxiety out of the holidays for people, and it gives you some pearls, some tools to smooth through and enjoy the time with your family and loved ones.
all right, guys, have a great holiday, and we'll see you in the next episode.